Well, we have Daniel Rochester in the studio with us, who's a youth worker, and we have Yasmine, whose title role is a social change agent. Welcome, Daniel and Yasmine.
Thanks for having us.
It's been a pleasure having you both. First of all, what I would like to, because your job title, how would you describe it, Daniel?
My job title?
Yes.
Being a youth worker?
Yes.
See, even though I'm down as a youth worker, I just say I bring myself to a role.
Okay.
So it's more about what I as an individual bring to that role, because there's a lot of generic youth workers out there, but there's different types of youth workers that work with different types of young people.
Because when I met you, what drew me to you when we first start speaking is the way you were so comfortable in discussing. You had youth worker on your back.
Okay, yeah.
That's what, first of all, that's what drove me to you.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, yeah, let me go and talk to this young man. And straight away, I find it so effortless speaking to you. And this is the reason why we are here today, to find out exactly how the impact you have made on these youths could you tell us something about these youths and their environment?
I mean, in regards to the work that we do, you'd say we work with the deemed hard to reach young people. We work with young people in secure estates, the prison estates, from the ages of around 15 upwards, and then also work with a lot of young people in the community. So again, they're the type of young people that are deemed as hard to reach and not always engaging in schools, education, local authority settings, yacht teams, all that.
So these type of young offenders then, don't they have any sort of government to help you to assist, deal with them? How do you get into this role of assisting them?
I'd say when you talk about assisting, I'd say in theory they do. Because in theory you've got a lot of agencies that put in support package that are deemed to support the young people, but you'd find the environments don't really change. So that says to me that there's packages that have been put in place doesn't always help them as individuals, because when exploring their harsh realities, the packages doesn't always address their harsh realities. It addresses the issue of we can support one person, but doesn't enable you sometimes to move from A to B.
Does the majority of these people, do they come from inner cities, would you say, mainly?
I'd say the majority that we work with come from an inner city environment.
And would it be down to quite a few contributory factors, poor housing, where they grow up, their environment, maybe single parent? Would you say these contributing factors why they get into problems?
From my experience, I would say it's just the normal behaviours within their environments, because I know there's issues around father deficit, there's issues around poverty, etc., etc. But then you have got some kids that are not involved or affected by them things, but still get caught up in the same behaviours. So once your environment tells you this is a normal way to behave, a lot of kids do actually do that.
But you don't find middle class people who get into these, or am I naive in thinking?
I'll let you speak on that.
Yes, they do.
I would say yeah.
And this is where some people attach themselves to certain behaviours that's not their norm, but they find attractive. So it's almost like an attractive alternative to what they normally live in, and then they caught up in the same behaviours. Yeah.
So this gang culture thing that has really taken over in the last few years, I mean, you must have dealt with quite a few people who's been in this gang. What would you say to the public that you try to do to change their views?
For me, I think sometimes it's just about looking about who they are, outside of who society kind of labels them to be. So building on what are their aspirations, there's more to life than this what you're involved in. And also I think just breaking it down and just educating them about, sometimes they're involved in gangs, but it's through things like exploitation. So it's just allowing them to understand, well, what is exploitation, and seeing at what points they can, because like when you start to break things down to them, they can start to see like, okay, like that happened to me, so I can kind of see how, yeah, I was kind of exploited or something like that. But then once they recognize some things like that, it's about working with them through it as well. Like you can't just make it out, like tell them that they're being exploited and then leave them with it. You've got to like try and work through certain things. Why did you think that happened? Like, how did you get involved with, how did you become friends with that person? What was the process? Because a lot of the times, for example, there's 4 stages of exploitation, right? And they'll talk about it openly, and it's not until I break down the 4 stages and I put them down that they start to recognize that, oh yeah, like that happened, and they can see through each stage Because at first they'd be like, nah.
So what about their education, like, because obviously they did not get through their formal education.
Well, that's because of the prison, school to prison pipeline, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think it's set up for a lot of the young people. So do you know what the school to prison pipeline is?
No, I don't.
It's basically saying a pipeline where it's the route from school to prison. So a lot of young people will end up, if they don't engage in school for whatever, because they don't have the adequate support, which is usually what it is, then they get sent out to alternative provision, and then from the alternative provision, if they don't engage, they go to a PRU, and then straight from the PRU, usually they go to a youth offenders or a secure estate, and that's the pipeline.
And
That's
what
a
Yasmine
dangerous
said,
road.
support, that's a massive thing, because there's a difference between ticking boxes and actually supporting kids. And that's where we're talking about, a lot of people put packages together that in theory says it helps, but it doesn't actually help them within their realities, because every individual has individual support needs. So you talk about special educational needs, etc. And these things, a lot of practitioners are not meeting the needs, and it's nothing sometimes against the practitioners, because their realities of their jobs, where they're given caseloads which is not realistic to go and see out all these kids within a 37-hour week. So there's many contributing factors, even before you even talk about the young person's behaviour.
So really, it's a numbers game. They've got to get through it.
I've seen, for example, there's times when I've managed social work students, and you're meeting them at the start of their journey, and they're so passionate about, they want to help. But when it comes to the reality of the job, now it's, I want to get through the day. Now there's a difference between I want to genuinely help, where you've initially got that drive, that passion, to now I just need to get through the day. Because I have all these expectations of me from my manager, my line manager, from local authority. Yeah, it can be it's a hard one to balance at times.
So how did you get into youth work, Daniel?
Myself, because I grew up in Hockley in Birmingham, and when I finished playing, when I was 16, I went away and played football.
Yes, I read your podcast.
So I played football for a few years, and then I played non-league football. But also, when you get into non-league football, you almost find a job as well. But I've always said,
it's a good avenue.
Yeah, so I got involved in youth work, working in Lazals, and because I was from the environment, to me it's not work. So it's more a case of helping my community. So we work with guys that deem harm to read, put football projects together, workshops, job clubs, exploring exploitation, all that kind of stuff. So to me,
and you must have met a lot of brilliant footballers, because I know a lot of young black guys that were brilliant footballers, and they just got fade away.
Yeah, I've met some great footballers, even great individuals outside of football. It's the same way we talk about we work in the prisons. We work with a load of young people with great potential, but it's the options that they're given in regards to their realities doesn't allow them to fulfill their potentials. And I can give you an example of this. Sometimes when you got young people on what's called MAPA cases, when sometimes you finish a MAPA case, my brother's done about 11 years in prison himself.
Okay.
Your MAPA sometimes says you have to go back to your environment. So the environment that you've going back to potentially is the environment where you're at risk. If you try and move to another area outside of the city, the local authority don't pick you up and say, yeah, he's allowed to live here. They'll send you back to where you come from.
So that's the MAPA.
MAPA, which can be a part of your conditions, your license conditions.
So you have to go back to the environment where you come from.
Yeah.
So what's the point in coming out, wanting to start anew, and then go back to the same environment?
There you go.
There is a lot of flaws in the system.
It's a vicious circle, isn't it?
It is, and we see kids might leave on a Friday.
Sorry.
They could be back on a Monday. The other day we were speaking to someone who'd done about 4 years. He was out for 15 days, came straight back. And we see this regular. So when we talk about repeat offending or repeat realities of these young people, and this is where sometimes my issue is, where I see practitioners celebrating all the work that they do, because we work with the reality of these how the kids are living.
So, but you must, for you to continue your job, you must have a sense of purpose, to know that you're doing something justified to these young people, to bring a sense of purpose to them, to continue with your job.
I think that's where I don't see it as a job. That's probably why. If I saw it as a job and it's a 37 hour, I don't think I'd do it. Because it's I talk about going back to my environment to work with someone, that is not a job.
So you go up and down the country, in different institutions with different youths.
and also in the community as well.
Okay.
It's not just there, but it's wherever there's a need, we kind of go in it.
So the gangs in that, I mean, what sort of sentencing some of them are doing?
A lot of life sentences. In some of the jails they work, you saw kids who was, I remember I was in Cookham Wood the other day. There's a kid who was 16 years old, and I walked into a classroom, and he looked kind of big, and I started talking to him, and before you know it, he told me he's doing 22 years. And this is a 16-year-old kid. I can remember when I walked into another class, there was two kids that, because I knew I played football once, and I played for, I think one lad said he played for West Ham, or another lad played for another. They're doing life sentences as well. So there are a lot of kids in there, when I talk about potential,
wasted potential.
Wasted potential.
And they can't continue their football career in there?
You can play, if young offenders estates, some estates allow other teams to come in and play, but you play for the prison, you're not getting proper training. And you're not getting playing out to play. Level of standard and all that kind of stuff. It's not the same training kit, football boots, the fitness every day. It's a completely different football, believe me.
It's just playing because of the sports.
Because I need to get out myself for a couple of hours, potentially. But that wouldn't be happening now because during COVID, for example, in COVID, a lot of guys are only, especially talking about the older estates, only getting out for about an hour a day out of their cell.
So they're locked in 20 hours.
Some were getting 15, 20 minutes. So when we're talking about, this is what we're talking about, when we're talking about the work and the impact of the work and the harsh realities in regards to what these people are living with. So imagine the trauma of being locked up 23 hours a
mentally.
day, and then eventually you come out to society. You come out under conditions where I'm just speaking about where you got to stay in that the environment where you got all your problems. How do we expect people to move from A to B? And then even the practitioners, where they're given a load of high caseloads, the reality of dealing with, imagine having 40 people to deal with in 37 hours a week.
You can't fit in. So don't they provide jobs when they're coming out for them, to assist them to get jobs?
In theory, I always say everything's theory, isn't it? Picture this, you're a young person that's been involved in a lot of conflicts. You've gone to prison, you generally want to get your head down. You want to solve, because now you've got time to think. I want to come out, I want to get a job. But before I went to prison, I got caught up in a load of conflicts. Imagine you go and get a job in a shop. You know these individuals that you've had problems with? Just because you've moved on, doesn't mean they've moved on. Now you become a target in that shop or in that place of work. Is it safe for you to go and do that?
No, it isn't. And plus, I would imagine housing would be a problem as well.
Housing as well. And you already know in regards to when you can be declared homeless. If you're offered a space and you turn it down, you're intentionally homeless. So imagine you've been housed in an area where you've got a lot of conflicts again.
Right.
So this is what I talk about, working within their actual realities and moving individuals from A to B. It's not as easy as, society doesn't allow it to be as easy.
Because I know you were saying, Yasmine, you were a prison officer before, and we wanted that, and you've sort of transferred roles. What made you transfer the role from being a prison officer?
I left the prison to kind of do what I do now. So it was more so to go to uni and get a youth work degree and then deliver youth work. So I used to do a lot of stuff around violence reductions. Any of the boys who was fighting, and they used to be down like the segregation, it used to be kind of my job to go and do like one-to-one interventions with them, as well as other prison officer duties.
So the segregation is where they're segregated from the rest of prisoners?
Yeah.
Okay, because they've done something in the prison?
Yes and no. It might be because they've done something, it might be because they've, for their own protection. It depends.
The future looks dim for people then who in prison, because the way we're seeing it is just a place that you go, spend a time and come out and go back to and it just keeps.
It can depend, because I know I'm talking from one perspective, but then there's another perspective where for some people they've been given structure. And if you're not involved in so much conflicts and all sorts, your pathway out, because you found yourself a bit, allows you to move on. But when we're talking about certain sections of society, it can be a bit harder.
But I think also from certain sections of society, depending on your mentality when you go in, because you can find people from certain areas in society who will use that prison centres. Like I work with young people who have said like they've been through a lot of traumatic things. They haven't engaged with mental health services on the out, but they've now got time to sit down and engage with a psychologist and a mental health team on site So they're working through their issues to hopefully get to a better space for when they come out. But then there's other people who kind of will say they see jail, like going to prison, sometimes if you're on a long sentence, see it as like an opportunity to learn, so a university.
Okay.
And
So they have university?
Yeah.
When
Okay.
you older jails,
Okay.
yeah, you get access to. So I just spoke to someone, you know,
Yeah.
and he's already planned out how he's going to do his prison sentence.
Okay.
But that individual, he's an individual who's very confident.
He's
He's very comfortable.
Mhm.
He's not going to get involved with them guys over there.
Okay.
He hasn't come in with a load of baggage,
Mm.
so he will get his head down. It's almost like he's done university there. And then when he comes out, he knows his next steps.
And they have gangs in the prison as well too, but not as.
Again, everything's theory
Yeah.
for me, because I know I've worked in some prisons and I've been told all these guys are gang members, and then you speak to the guys or you know the guys, and they're not just affiliated due to colour, due to friendships, due to all that kind of stuff. So it all depends on who tells you the story, innit?
But looking, if one should want to look on the bright side, I mean, I know in there is already dim, but we still got to look to bring out human beings that can at least come into society and be some contribution to society. How do we look for these people? How can we help them when they come out?
I always say find attractive alternatives, which is an alternative to what they gone in for, to what their friendship circles are telling them to do, etc. Giving them opportunities, and it's real opportunities. Give them more life experiences. I can remember I was watching, did you ever seen Black Farmer?
No, I
There was a
haven't.
program on TV called The Black Farmer when I was doing youth work in the Zows. And I can remember I aimed to bring the kids on it, but the kids didn't want to do it at the time. But then they saw other kids from different areas doing it. And suddenly it was like, you know what, I actually would have tried that.
Mhm.
So until you start trying different things and getting different experiences, you never really get to know yourself. And I think this is where I say it was better for me, because when I got to 16, I moved out of inner city Birmingham.
So maybe it's a good thing you
I'm
did.
not saying my experience was initially a good experience, but I'll get to know a bit more about myself, see whether I'm resilient, whether I like different things, meeting different people, all that kind of stuff, rather than every day exposed to many things that can make you vulnerable.
Because these people are doing long sentences. I mean, even when they come out, they need to be followed up and have, psychologists and people can give their mental.
I was going to say, I think it's through the gate, the access to through the gate support. So through the gate is basically when they come out. Anything after that to kind of resettle into the community. But I think that's an area which is it lacks, because a lot of the young people that, especially the young people from the youth estate, and also when I was a prison officer, I was a little bit older. Like we said, they'll go on the Friday and they'll come back on the Monday, but sometimes it might just be that the accommodation where they try to put them is not suitable.
Right.
The workers who, they had some college things or some work things that were set up to help them when they come out. So say for example they had a job opportunity when they come out that was supposed to be promised for them, and then it falls through. Now they've been amped up because it's like, okay, cool, I got a fresh start, I can try this, but you fell through again, and so you have to think as well that for them young people, if they've already been through things where they're used to that people just don't come through for them, they're going to be a bit reluctant. So I think,
so the negative mindset sets in again.
And also having the right person in front of you to engage with. Because sometimes you could have the greatest opportunity, but the person you're going to meet who's going to tell you about this opportunity, you may not connect. So straight away, that's a no-go. As to if you've got the right person who they can identify with and relate to and all them kind of things, and that person relays the information, that enables you now to say, you know what, I'm actually going to try it because Yasmine told me this. I trust Yasmine. I trust Yasmine's judgment. Even if I wouldn't normally try it, because Yasmine's told me, I'm actually going to give it a go. There's a difference. Because once you build a relationship with someone, because when a lot of these guys leave, we stay in touch with a lot of them.
I would imagine
and it's
so.
out of their own time. It's not because the license condition says anything, it's because they want to stay in touch.
And you see, once you stay in touch, you see the improvement in them more than if you didn't, for example.
I don't know.
But you know what though?
I want to see some light at the end of the tunnel.
I think it's because we work within the harsh realities in it. And as much as, it's like when people say to me, you never, I don't know how to put it, it's almost like you never celebrate what you do. Nah, because even if I helped one person, there's still a million more.
But you can't help everyone.
No,
you know,
but
and
you know what it is for me? There's a lot of money that goes into agencies, a lot of money that goes into environments,
the government's
but the environments doesn't change. So that means there's something wrong. And for as long as we keep doing the same thing, the environment's still not going to change. Because like for example, where I grew up, it's no different to where I was grew up, and then we talking about 30, 40 years later. So something's wrong in it. But we've celebrated a load of practitioners. You see, you go onto the news, you go onto TV, everybody's talking about all this great work they're doing, but the environments don't change.
So you think in Hockland it's still the same?
Still got the same issues. Still got a lot of the same issues. I remember there's two sides to Hockland as well. But one's more prevalent than the other, and it's always been like that.
But don't you think also it's the choice that people make, decisions in life?
You talk about adults or young people?
Young people too?
No, because remember, young people's their brains start functioning at a different age and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Learn behaviour. I know there's mistakes I made as a young person. Luckily, I wasn't get caught for certain things. But as an adult, I'd never make them same decisions. So when you talk, but when you talk about adults now, because remember you talk about adults in charge of budgets, adults do the job descriptions, adults employ people, adults give out sentences. So it's different in regards to holding accountability. Adults and young people, for me, are two different things.
So you mix with a lot of social work and probation officers as well.
Housing, probation, police. Yeah, wherever there's local authority, voluntary agencies, all sorts. And the thing is, you have got some genuinely good people who are trying to do this work, but they're not the ones that always get the support to be able to do the work.
It seems like a lot of money has gone. The government dish out a lot of money straight to a lot of.
I've seen a lot of money going. But I always also say that money ain't always everything, can it? Giving someone your time and attention, that doesn't cost you nothing. That's why I say I don't see this as a job.
So would you say when you walk away from it, whatever time, or you don't have a time set because now
it's not a job. If somebody phones me and they want to help, no difference if my cousin, my friend, if you can help someone in life, you help them, innit?
That's a good perspective to have, you know. But just going back, Yasmine, to when you were a prison officer, you must have seen a lot of different arguments and fights, and you know, not being sexist, but as a woman, do you have quite a few prison officers in there to assist you to deal with these things?
I think the answer to it is yes. There are enough, but there's different things in it. So if something happens, you call for assistance or a general.
And you were working in a man's prison mainly.
Yeah. But I think for me, I never really had that many issues working as a prison officer because, like I said, I'm from the environment, so I can build that rapport. And again, it's that thing about renting your role and owning your character in it. Like I'm a prison officer, but I'm still Yasmine at the end of the day.
Okay.
So that's what I carry with me in no matter what job I'm in. So yeah.
Do you get a lot of job satisfaction from it? Because I know that well, you must do it. Why do you do it? Then is it because I'm sure it's not just financially.
No, it's not the financial thing. You know what it is? Working with the kids is the easiest part.
Right.
Working with the young people, even whether it's the older ones, the young people, that's the easiest part. I think it's just the system. It's the system.
Okay.
That's the problem. And like I said, like for example, me and Dan could be on a wing talking to the young people who the officers deem as challenging, rude, disruptive, but to us are standing still. Like I was gonna say before when you were speaking, I think in terms of like when we're delivering sessions, for example, when we're delivering sessions, you know how somebody with ADHD can't sit still,
right?
Can't sit still, right? So we might have people in the class who've got ADHD who usually are a problem bouncing around, but if one of us do take the class or any of our any other people that we work with, guaranteed we can get that young person to sit down for at least 2 and 3/4 hours. I'll give you 15 minutes to walk around. Yeah. But they'll be engaged for the whole thing. Do you know what I mean?
And that's where you talk about who they identify with.
Yes, they do. They gotta connect. They gotta connect. You know, but it seems like the public don't really get to see and get to know what's happening in these places, and sometimes they make assumptions. The assumptions is totally wrong, because we on the outside here now, we wouldn't not be knowing, we can't know what's going on. We just got to take it from the media, etc. What we see. you know. But obviously, I would love for us to say that, I mean, especially our young people, when they go into prison, that there is some sort of safety net after they come out, and that they can aspire to, you know, that their life can get on the straight and narrow once again. You know, don't you see that in some of them?
I think sometimes they're motivated to change initially, in regards to motivating to want to try something different initially, because you've had so much time on your hands. If you let me try something. But when we're talking about if something's been set up for you, and I'm gonna attend this interview or not attend this, and then suddenly that breaks down, now I'm back to
that is the main barrier. I think for me, one of my one thing that I would say is kind of, like I said, the through the gate service. So ideally, in fact, I might not say it all, ideally, like, they would need to have like that bank account, that photo ID. A lot of them don't have no photo ID. A lot of them don't have a bank account.
Because it's very difficult for them to get a bank account.
Or they just don't want to be caught up in the system type of thing. They got shoe boxes. Do you know what I mean? That's what they put the money in, the shoe box. They don't want a bank. Bank for what?
That mentality still is
What's that?
Learned behaviour.
It's
past that.
Archived behaviour.
If you believe the system ain't for you, why would you contribute to the system? Or, it's like when you have no faith in the system.
But you have to move. I know you have to move within the law, even if to get justice in some way, isn't it?
I agree with that, but at the same time, we are talking about having the right people in front of you to help and guide you. Sometimes if you haven't got the right, because if you talk about perceptions, straight away, we talk about labels like gang members.
Right, gang members.
Imagine the individual doesn't see themselves as that. As a worker, I turn up and I see you as a gang member. So now someone's not right straight away, innit?
It's a stigma.
And I've got, and now I expect this behaviour from you, and then suddenly you can be that nervous worker, which is not a good match. You know, you talk about you being comfortable straight away. It's no different when we go into the environments. Unless you got people that are very comfortable. Because we see people struggle big time.
Because going into that environment initially must be kind of scary. I mean, for someone who hasn't been in, you know.
It depends though, innit? But it's no different to when you hear perceptions of if I walk through Handsworth or walk through the Zows. It's the same. If you have these perceptions and these stereotypes, it's going to be seen whenever you sit in front of an audience.
So, Yasmine, what I would like to ask you, what would you like to see change about that system for us to look at it in a positive light?
Is it what is this, criminal justice system or the prison system? The
prison system, mainly, because from what we've been discussing, we can't see.
You know, I think it's more than just a prison issue, innit?
Yeah.
It's a system.
Okay, the whole system, then, because it's very, very complex.
I feel like there's gotta be, you know, when you look at the makeup of decision makers to start with, if the makeup of decision makers doesn't always reflect what the people that they deem as the problem, how are you gonna break that barrier? Unless you got people that can identify with them people to sit up and help influence decisions, that's the starter. No matter what you do on the ground, if the people who make the decision have no understanding about who they're talking about, it's going to be a problem. Because that's where you're going to get your stereotypes, your prejudice, all that kind of stuff. So straight away, if that's your starting point, it's a problem. It's no different to when, you know...
And that's not going to change.
But if you talk about football, you talk about big businesses and all sorts.
It's not going to change.
The makeup looks a certain way.
But so what would that's what you would like to see change?
That's what has to change.
For any of these young people to have any chance of coming out.
We do see some young people who turn to faith. And then that gives them a different perspective on life. So their appreciation for different things ain't what it was before. So that can be.
So they have access to different religion in there, Muslim, all the different denominations.
Yeah. So there's some, but that isn't through a practitioner helping you. That's because part of you found yourself. Unless Jazz thinks different, but. Yeah.
But before we conclude the interview, I still want to come out with something positive in order for these young people, because I know you're traveling up and down. You've been doing it for quite some time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can answer the question.
Yes.
I think for me, I think more needs to be done to kind of intervene earlier in the school to prison pipeline.
Okay.
Because that, for me, realistically, if you can stop them from going to jail in the first place, we won't have to have this conversation. Okay. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So that, and I think also just having the right people inside to do the necessary work. I think a lot of the time, a lot of people who end up in prison, that when you actually break down their life story, they've been through a lot of things. So it's just about...
So really, again, it's coming from home.
Yeah.
It's coming from their home as well. So are we going to blame the system for that, for the home where they come from?
Yeah, but if you're not dealing with trauma and there's penalising behaviour, they're two different things. Because if you talk about mental health as well.
Yeah, mental health.
If you're penalising people because they got mental health concerns, so that means there's a reason for the behaviour. So if you deal with the behaviour rather than the reason, you're not going to fix nothing, are you?
It seems like a very complex issue to deal with, you know. But I pose the question to you, and I'm posing the question to Daniel. What would you like to see for these young people coming out of prison? The support and the aspiration that they should look forward to.
I would like for the young people to recognise that them and each other are not the problem with each other, because all that they're doing is fighting against each other, and if they wake up and realise how much potential and how much power and all that kind of stuff that they have, they would flourish in life. Because like I said, we see so much potential amongst these kids. We tell them all the time, and to me, a lot of them are the greatest kids you'll ever come across. So when I talk about work, let's say my journey going to work is like, I don't want to go to work. As soon as I'm in front of them, I'm not at work. Because they're great. I'll be honest, a lot of them are great, but yeah.
I see your point.
Because they almost brighten up my day kind of thing when you're in front of them. And it's the least I can do is...
You don't count no time when you're in front of them.
That's not work. That's not work. And it might sound crazy.
No, but it's
about people in the newspapers and you see the crimes, all that kind of stuff. These people must be this. But when you're in front of them, it's no different to me.
But that's a great satisfaction, is it? But that's something positive to come out of it, the interview with, to say at least you feel satisfied with purpose.
They're great. Yeah, there's great potential a lot, but he's giving them the opportunities.
So what they need is opportunities, more opportunities.
Yeah, and understandable.
And support.
Yes.
Are you talking through the gate?
Yeah, through the gates.
I think opportunities and support, and just people that they can rely on. And like, if you say that you're gonna get this person, like if you say you're gonna do something for somebody, it's the same thing what they say in when they're in prison, and they say to prison officers, don't say you're gonna do something to a prisoner if you're not gonna be able to do it. It's better you say like, I'll try, or I'm not sure if I can do it. Don't say yes, because they might sit behind their door for 23 hours now waiting for you to do that one thing that could have took you 5 seconds, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's just about effective communication, the right type of support, so somebody just to kind of, say for example, how we work in the prison where young people feel comfortable to come to us whenever they see us and say, oh, this is what's been going on, or whatever it might be. Just having that person on the outside. On
the outside, yes.
Because that can make all the difference, because when they're getting additional pressures when they've come out to get back into the lifestyle, if they've got somebody on the phone that can say, you know what, I'll come and get you tomorrow, we'll go and have a look and look for some jobs or do something like that. That's more beneficial than them thinking, oh, nobody cares anyway. Do you get me?
It's a little time out of reality.
But I'm glad that we managed to come in, and at least we can look at the positive now to say that to say at least you get self-satisfaction from it, and I'm sure somewhere along the line you've benefit some of these kids who have got into problems. I'm 100% sure. I want to thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having
Daniel
us.
And Yasmine, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Destiny Global TV. Please subscribe and leave your comment below.